The topic for today is interest groups. As we move forward, I'm hoping that you guys perhaps talk to your parents and find out if they have contributed or if they belong to any specific interest group. Just kind of pick their brain and see where they're at. Remember, you don't have to be an old codger to participate in interest groups. They have a lot of young, innovative ideas out there, and for people your age, young adults as well. So interest groups basically are groups of people that have common interest, and they're trying to affect legislation, or they're trying to affect government influence on the topics that are important to them. So interest groups ultimately are supposed to be bridging that gap. You have a couple of items out there that bridge gaps between the government and the public, and that's the media and, in this case, interest groups. All right, so these groups will take a fee from its members and then apply that money, that fee, to supporting and marketing their cause. So one of the larger interest groups out there, the National Rifle Association, is incredibly influential in our government, our politics. Some people think it's too powerful, and that can be argued. But I have a link here for you, so you could always click on this link and you can see that there are literally, and this is just a handful, but there are literally hundreds of interest groups out there. And normally they're going to be, just a segment of the population. Some are larger than others, of course. For instance, I keep getting mail from this in this interest group. Now, I'm not a member, although I could be. I meet the requisite requirements, but I have yet to join. I have yet to join because, I get military discounts for most everything. So a lot of the benefits that you get from joining these interest groups, of course, for some type of discount or literature or opportunities to go places, reduced rates, things like that. So there are benefits to going to or joining interest groups. It just has to hopefully match your wants and needs for the price. I don't know if I can find where I was. So okay. I am a member of the National Rifle Association. I have been for most of my life. However, at a younger age, in my 20s, I paid a $500 fee to become, I think it was a gold card member, something of that sort. And I figured, well, that was going to be it. There's my $500. And even today, I still get the monthly annual or the monthly magazine, but they still send me opportunities to become. Oh, you could be a platinum member, or a sapphire member, or something of that sort, for another $1,000. And I refused to continue that. And you get better benefits, of course, throughout the United States, but and I've just kind of kept it at that early $500, and that'll probably be it. Now, I mentioned that I believe, that people say that the NRA has become too powerful, and I'm kind of in that crowd. So that's just something that I have to work through in the coming years. All right, so all of these interest groups work around public policy, right? So their hope is to get the government to enact policies around their topic. All right, so political parties. You are familiar with their purpose in life. They basically have to appeal to their constituents in order to, get campaign funding, in order to further their political livelihood. So the political parties basically reach out, have to, take the temperature of the people that have a like mind set, and try to find ways to approach them. Well, what better way to approach citizens than to align themselves with interest groups? All right. So as politicians become ingrained in the culture, then they get to know the interest groups that kind of tailor toward their political party. So the NRA, I mentioned, happens to be mostly a conservative organization. It leans to the Republicans, and most of the support for the NRA would go to Republican candidates. Now, I don't know if that's across the board. I highly doubt that it's across the board, because I have a feeling that there are conservative Democrats, that also would gain support from that organization. But that's kind of what these political interest groups are doing. They are trying to, tailor the politicians to bring attention to their cause. All right. Throughout the years, I've also belonged to the World Wildlife Federation, the NEA, the National Education Association, which is a teachers union. So I have had other special interest groups that I've paid money to. There's military interest groups that I also belong to. So throughout my life, I have been a part of some of these organizations. And again, it's you're really promoting your own self-interest, but you're doing it with other people that agree with your interests, hopefully. All right, and here's kind of the key fundamentals to the interest group: raising awareness, right? You'd be surprised at how many people may have a similar belief or concern. And when you can get, especially with World Wide Web nowadays, when you can get online and go to these websites and see that there are literally thousands, if not tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people that agree with you, there's strength in numbers. Now, how I also am a believer that there's too much money in politics. So it's a little bit of a conundrum for me that, to give money to these organizations, to some extent, I understand from a personal aspect. I don't do it as often as others. I'll put it that way. All right. So their function basically is to provide information and to spread the word, and basically market the cause. And theoretically, to get you politically active. This keep tabs, bullet down there, keep tabs on various public agencies and officials. So they would refer to that, similar to the media, as a watchdog. So some of these organizations, or all the organizations, are kind of looking out for their cause. So they will also look at competitive causes and try to gather resources and information. All right, some of the criticisms. Again, influence is far out of reach of the size, the importance. So again, I use the NRA. Not that gun rights aren't important or critical in this country, but the massive amount of support that they receive sometimes and have influence in Washington can be troublesome. And I happen to be one that agrees with that it's troublesome. And then as far as representation goes, you claim to represent a specific point of view, and yet your actions deny that you support that point of view. So really, how do you check? How do you check where your money is going and how they're using your money? And that is something that is a major concern for a lot of people. I want to know how you are utilizing the money that I send to you on a monthly basis. That can be a criticism. And then tactics. In today's political environment, I'd hate to believe that negative is the norm, and negative many times is effective and brings attention. And so therefore some of these organizations may use negative ads or negative presentations to get their point of view across, or propaganda. But we'll get to propaganda. All right. So some of the primary reasons: economic, specific interests. Again, a large group, strength in numbers, basically. Regional, some of them are regional. Specific causes, Greenpeace comes to mind when you talk about specific causes. Certain groups, I've already talked about the AARP, and then religion. There are a lot of religious interest groups out there. And what better way to get involved if you're a religious individual than to join an organization that has a like-minded cause or belief. All right, I put this on here just because unions historically have leaned to the Democrats. And over the last 100 years, I suppose, they have been very influential in elections, right? And collective bargaining and the use of unions is a whole topic in of itself, in that these unions generally try to speak on behalf of the workers, and in the process, they become mediators between the workers and the business owners, and they try to increase wages and health care for the workers. They have a lot of these really beneficial causes to the labor union, and then there's the downside to the unions, protecting bad workers and ineffective workers, I should say, and things like that. So, there's pros and cons to the labor unions, but historically, the labor unions have been utilized for the betterment of labor workers, to speak on their behalf. And like I said, it historically has been a Democratic stronghold. Now it's wavered, in the last decade or so. In this last election, labor unions kind of put Biden over the top in a lot of the battleground states. So they've kind of made a little bit of a resurgence. However, since 2010, it's the right to work, which is kind of the counter to the unions, that has spread throughout the country. And the right to work is a more conservative or Republican point of view, where you're not forced to join a union. You don't have to pay these fees or these dues, because those dues, were being used to support political opponents or Democratic candidates. And in 2010, there was really this very conservative Republican governors movement, including our own state, toward right to work, where you no longer had to join unions, and they kind of outlawed unions, broke the unions, to include Wisconsin. So that was kind of the counter. So right now we're at this crossroads, especially for the union people, where the momentum has shifted away from joining unions, even though they have had a pretty established cause throughout their history and support to the Democrats. And with the waning of the unions, a lot of those dues that normally would go toward political campaigns has been lost. And the Republicans are very aware of that when they've created these right-to-work states. All right, public interest groups. So special interest, public interest, special interest, a special whatever it is, key interest. Public interest then would be something that is the betterment for all or most of the people within this society. All right, and there are, again, hundreds, if not thousands, of public interest groups out there as well. You see this one's People Against Plastic. Worthwhile cause, I'm sure. All right. So their influence. Are they influential? You better believe they are influential. So this is a 2006 campaign contributions, and I'm sure this has increased. You get the grassroots at 15%, and then you get these interest groups. Again, I personally believe it's out of whack. I still believe there's too much money in politics, and these special interest groups lead to that or help contribute to that. All right, propaganda. This has been something that has been apparent in the last 4 years, especially. All right, well, negative ads have always been found to be effective in politics. That's why when you see these political ads, a lot of times they are saying what the candidate has done wrong or has been ineffective at. They're not duckies and bunnies and butterflies and rainbow messages. They are attacking their opponents. Right. Well, propaganda has now been kind of immersed into the negative campaign ads. And in the United States now, we have a hard time separating facts from propaganda or untruths. And that has been a critical change in our landscape, our political landscape, in the last 4 years. So that disinformation is a difficult task. And that is a major challenge moving forward, is trying to separate this, or at least be able to have avenues to fact check this type of information. All right, name calling and inflammatory language is the norm right now, and that has not always been the case. It's always been part of the politics, but not to this extent. All right, then we get into the PACs and the super PACs. These political action committees are organizations, you know, that there are rules to how much money they can give to candidates, but their whole purpose in life is to raise money for congressional candidates and presidential candidates. And they reach out, a special interest may contribute, or you can contribute directly to these organizations. And again, the money is astronomical, and the effect that they have from large donors is questionable as far as democracy is concerned, because those with money seem to have the influence when it comes to these type of organizations. And again, the Supreme Court ruled in Citizens United that money is speech, and therefore, if you want to spend your money giving it to these PACs and super PACs, well, that's just a form of speech, and therefore is acceptable or constitutional. And since the passage of the Citizens United Supreme Court case, the money has exploded in politics. I don't know if it was, I'd have to look. I don't want to overquote how much it took for this last campaign, but I would not be surprised if it were tens of billions of dollars. All right, so super PACs then can accept unlimited contributions, and they have the ability to use that money to support candidates. They cannot directly donate to federal candidates or parties, but state candidates, I believe they have access to, and they have ways of getting that money to federal candidates, but there are regulations. But again, super PACs and PACs have certain laws and rules and regulations that they have to follow. And there are organizations out there that watch these organizations to make sure they're following the rules. But again, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. All right, Bernie Sanders made a name by not allowing or not accepting PAC money or super PAC money. His campaign was all grassroots, right? But he's kind of the exception to the rule. Most candidates will take money from these PACs. And when they do so, then there's almost like a quid pro quo. Well, if you're going to take money from us, then you have to represent certain viewpoints. And that's where the conundrum lies, is the influence. Where's the influence coming from? Some of these donors do not have to admit to where there's no transparency in some of these PACs and super PACs. So you don't know who is all contributing into these organizations sometimes. And that has become a problem in our politics. The lack of transparency. If the Koch brothers from Wisconsin, billionaires, are going to put tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars into the Republican PAC or super PACs, they have a specific agenda that they want to accomplish. And that influence really supersedes Joe average citizen Ryan Casper, who can put maybe $100 into an organization compared to hundreds of millions of dollars. So that disparity of income that Bernie Sanders talks about is one of the reasons he chose not to be represented by PACs and super PACs. All right, and then we get into lobbying. Lobbying is an extension of these special interest groups. So K Street, they're called, which is down by Wall Street, which is which is in DC area, not New York. But these lobbies are organizations that will reach out and actually go to Capitol Hill to talk to representatives, and they will take the money from their organization and use it to try to help steer legislation. So a lobbyist is paid for by one of these interest groups to go to Capitol Hill to actually have discussions with lawmakers. All right. The vast majority of lobby organizations are on the up and up, and they do, it's by the book. There are certain laws that regulate what they can and can't do. But again, they are trying to pressure lawmakers to enact legislation that favors their organization, which includes campaign contributions. All right. So special interest groups cannot give direct money to politicians. They can go through the lobbies, and then the lobbyist can not directly give them cash, but they can add to campaign contributions. So that is, again, there's rules that dictate what can and can't happen with these organizations. But along the same theme I've mentioned throughout is this is just another example of a large amount of money being available in our politics. And money has the potential of corrupting. That's just my editorial. All right. Thank you for listening. That's your intro to interest groups, special interest groups.